Will Goldstein here, thekingscourt.com. Just a little update. I'm releasing another album soon called Jesus Enters Jerusalem. And I thought it was going to be released a while ago, but it's an opera, and I'm waiting on some people to do their part of the opera. So it looks like that's going to happen soon. So hopefully within the next week or so, 10 days, it'll be out there. It's called Jesus Enters Jerusalem. And also I'm planning on releasing another book, Proverbs 2, another 91 song. And that should be released this year as well. So this, again, I'm going through this wonderful book, Zohar, the Book of Enlightenment. And I can't read it, so I'm paraphrasing. I'm basically telling you my own words, what's happening, and giving a critique of an analysis of it. In this particular book, this section is called Openings. I'm calling it Divine Openings. Gives a little bit more clue to what it's about. From a Christian point of view, another way of looking at it is Jesus describes the narrow gate, entering at the narrow gate or the straight gate. It's about openings. It's sort of like a portal to God, a divine way. It's a mystical ideology, and the Zohar, a lot of it's about mysticism. So the verse that's associated with this, and it says he, and it's really Abraham, it was sitting in the opening of the tent, and Sarah heard from the opening of the tent. And this is in Genesis 18:1, and then also verse 10, where I'm going to begin. And so you have this rabbi, and he says, well, her, and he's talking about her husband, is the one that's in the gates, and this husband sits among the elders of the land, and that's basically Proverbs 31:23. Now he's starting to open up and discuss what this is about. So then he says the Blessed Holy One. Well, who is the Blessed Holy One according to this? And that's Ein Sof. So we have the Kabbalah and we have the Tree of Life. So Ein Sof is basically the unknowable God. Even Christianity, other than the fact of Jesus, is God the Father is considered unknowable in that sense. So, but the Blessed Holy One, he's in glory, but also he's hidden, and he's far beyond what we could ever conceive of. He is concealed, and so we really don't know what we can only speculate about God the Father or Ein Sof. And no one in this world, other than Jesus perhaps, when he was here, could have really told us the truth about it. And even that is, he concealed a lot and didn't tell us. He only told us what we needed. And there's really no one who has ever seen him, because he's all powerful and is beyond anything that we could possibly comprehend. And he also dwells in unapproachable light. And so who can really fully grasp or understand his wisdom? There's endless scriptures that talk about that, understanding or even withstand his presence. And so basically he's hidden. He's beyond the beyond, even above the heavens. And he's concealed and he's transcendent. And he's basically giving descriptions of God the Father. So there's beings, then he goes on to say, well, there's beings above and there's beings below, there's creatures below. Of course, we would think of that as being the beings above would be the angels, and the creatures below would be more like the mortals, like us and other animals or whatever. Everyone, no matter who, whether it's angels or humans or even nature, is all in worship and praise of the Blessed Holy One. And blessed be the presence of Yahweh in his place. That particular verse is Ezekiel 3:12. The ones below, which meaning us, we're proclaiming that he is above, but he's not really, he's above even the heavens. So he's outside of even the heavens. He's above everything, whether it be the heavens or the earth below. And that's out of Psalm 113 verses 4. So he's the God of creation. And this is really a picture of panentheism. He's immanent because he's both outside and he's inside nature. He's outside and far beyond anything we can comprehend, and yet he is also within us. So that's panentheism, being inside nature and outside of nature. The ones above are saying that he's also below, and that's the reference to what I'm saying, panentheism. Then your presence is all over the earth. If his presence wasn't all over the earth, this earth would not be functioning. I'm talking about nature. I'm talking about the rising of the sun, and the moon, and everything that happens in nature. So everything in all the worlds, whether it be the world above or the worlds below, are all saying, blessed be the presence of Yahweh. And like I said, his essence is unapproachable. He dwells in unapproachable light, and in that sense he is unknowable. And no one could really identify this Almighty God. This Ein Sof is what this book is basically refers to him as. And then it says, well, her husband is known, and her husband's known in the gates. Well, who is the her? So the her, they would say, is the Shekinah. Shekinah is the light within us. I would say it's the essence of our soul, the light of our being. The fact that I can talk to you is basically because I'm illuminated in one sense, in two senses. From a Christian point of view, I'm illuminated from the presence of the Holy Spirit, but in another sense, I'm illuminated just because I'm alive. The light's on, the power is on, the electricity is flowing through my body. I'm 98.6. Her husband is known in the gates. Well, who's the husband? Ein Sof, God the Father. So it's a relationship between the Spirit within and God the Father. And her husband, well, that's the Blessed Holy One. That's Ein Sof. It's basically, you could say that that's part of the Trinity in a sort of way. So he is known in the gates. So the big question is, what is the gates? The gates is the place where we enter through, like Jesus said, the narrow gate, the straight gate. So the gate, he is known in the gates. That means that he, in a mystical sense, prayer, communion, contemplation with God. And so when we do that and we enter into this mystical world, then we can have, through prayer, we can have communion with God, and it's entering through that gate that can happen. And it's also associated with the imagination. So there's different degrees and different levels that one might experience. The further that one advances in mysticism, that one might encounter this. And we're connecting with the spirit of wisdom that's in our heart and in our mind. And this is how, by entering through that gate, this is how we know what we do know of God, and also obviously through Scripture. So the way Jesus would say this is, the kingdom of heaven is within you. Again, he mentions her husband is known in the gates. So that again is through this imagination that we enter in at the level that I was just talking about. We know him to the degree that he wants us to know him, and some people undoubtedly know him more and in greater depth than others. But no one has ever really been able to attain complete knowledge of God. This is impossible, frankly. Probably that will never be impossible, even in eternity, to have a complete comprehension of God. I think my personal opinion is as eternity rolls on, we will have more and more of a revelation of God. Because again, God the Father dwells in unapproachable light. So he keeps going back to, the gates. Who are the gates? And then it goes back to, O gates, lift up your heads. And this is mentioned in Psalms. And these be lifted up. And he's talking about eternity. And the King of glory may come. So in other words, when we enter through that gate, then the King of Glory comes and communes with us. So in like Revelation, it talks about he's God standing out at the door, and when we knock on that and knocking on the door and we open it, then we can commune with God. That's the gate, okay, of communion and prayer. And then this is again divine, could be divine vision. There's different levels, and depends on the personal relationship that we have with God through prayer. And there's then he talks about these gates. So that, like I said, there's different levels and spheres on high. And so the ascent, the ladder of spiritual ascent, and God becomes more and more known to us as he reveals himself. And if this was not happening, if this was not available to us through these gates, then no one would be able to commune with God. So this is really all about prayer and mystical vision. He talks about Neshama, and that is unknowable. So that's really the spiritual soul. So what he's saying is that inside us, there's this spiritual soul that is connected with breath and fire. We're breathing, and that's the way I look at it, is that breath that we're taking in, that oxygen, is giving fuel to the fire within us that illuminates our being. And when we die, then we get cold. So that's happening inside us, but that part of us really is unknowable. In other words, we can't really look inside and see all that's happening. We just know that it is happening. And so we experience the effects of that through our body and through our limbs of our body. And so it's carrying out the design that this, spiritual soul within us is designing for our life. And so in that sense, this spiritual soul within us, this neshama, sorry for the pronunciation, I don't speak Hebrew, is in a sense both known and unknown. So we know it's there, we're experiencing it, we're experiencing reality through our body and through our mind and our heart and in our minds and the way that we think in our spiritual imagination. So in that sense, we're similar to God, because the Blessed Holy One, the Ein Sof, well, he's known and he's unknown. He's known, through nature. He's within us. He's through all of nature. Again, panentheism, but he's also outside it. He's transcendent. So he's hidden away in another sense. And so as we open through these gates, we have access to God within us. And he becomes, the more we do that, the more he becomes known to us. And his essence is obviously of divine origin. And we have an essence or a spark of that divinity in our spiritual essence as well. So there's similarities in that we are made in the image of God. So then it goes on and then kind of gets more depth into the mystical journey and how the Sephiroth is revealed one by one. So there's different levels. Again, this goes back to the Tree of Life. So there's different levels and there's openings within openings. So this kind of makes me think of the interior castle or House of Many Mansions that, in the Bible and what Jesus said, or maybe of Teresa Avila, who wrote Interior Castle, or the Ladder of Spiritual Ascent. Through these mansions, Interior Castle, God becomes more and more known to us. So how is God made known to us? Well, the beginning of God really truly being known to us, in a sense, is through righteousness. So, first of all, I'm a Christian, so Christ is total righteousness, complete righteousness. So through access through his righteousness and also through our own, as we become more and more like Christ, then the Shekinah becomes, the light within us becomes more and more revealing to us. And so it's hidden in it. That light is hidden within us, and it's kind of like in a tent, and there's a veil of darkness that's there. And so how do we open up this, and get beyond this veil of darkness? And again, it's through moral character and through righteousness, and from my perspective, from becoming a Christian and accepting Christ. So this in Psalm 118, verse 19, it says, "Open for me the gates of righteousness." So again, that's making reference to, that's a spiritual ascent, is through righteousness. And this is the first of the openings to enter. So that's the beginning. So in other words, not much happens until there's an acknowledgement of righteousness. So there's a huge amount of sin in one's life, well then not much is going to happen on the spiritual plane. All other openings, then, as one enters in that first gate of righteousness, then slowly they become more clear and in view to us. And so we get a clarity of this opening, and then we discover, as we continue on this journey, then the inner journey, I would call it, we discover more and more openings, more and more castles, and all of them we can abide in. So basically we have an expanded vision, and again, this is through righteousness, which really translates to purity. And then we have more of an expanded vision and get closer to God and rise through the Sephirot. Then he's going on, he's talking about Israel and saying that Israel's in exile. And so they are no longer aware of this opening, and it's really been shut to them, because a sure way to shut this opening is through wickedness. When they abandon God, then these openings are no longer available. So then it's impossible for them to know as long as they stay in wickedness, or it's impossible for them to really grasp the depth of this. And then he goes on to say that Israel will eventually come forth from this exile, and this is when they're getting more into the messianic idea and the Messiah. And from a Christian perspective, of course, then the second coming of Christ, and the angels and all the believers, and the birth of the millennial kingdom. And anyway, when they believe also in the Messiah coming, and that this will be the soaring of the spheres, okay, and we will perceive wondrous things, and we will obtain precious wisdom, and all this is when Messiah comes. And then during this age, this new world, or this age of peace, then Yahweh will alight upon them, or the people that are saved, so Israel or Christians, or whichever way you want it, and then look at it, and then upon the earth there will be a spirit of wisdom, and there will be power and knowledge, more knowledge and awe of the power and glory of Yahweh. And he's referring to Isaiah 11 verse 2. And all these are really, the faithful are destined to ascend in this way. And the opening comes from below within us. So we're below. And then we start to ascend. And then this is the opening of the tent. And then we are destined, those who believe in the Messiah are destined to be with the Messiah, and he is coming, this Messiah, they say in here, is coming to judge the world, just like Christians say. And he shall judge the poor with righteousness, Isaiah 11:4. So now it's getting back to the beginning when it's opened up with Abram. So believe it or not, this is all in these rabbis' minds associated with the first verse. So Abram received the good news. So basically, I just translated what they're saying is this is the sort of ideas that Abraham was receiving from God and the two angels who came and had dinner with him. Okay, and again, that's in the opening verse. And they were receiving this, Abram received this good news, and this sphere was delivered to him. then God says, as he departs, by the way, to go to judge Sodom and Gomorrah, he says before he leaves that I will return when life is due. And he's talking about the birth of Isaac. So Sarah has been listening in the back, and that's in Genesis 18:10. This was the opening of the tent. So in other words, this is the first revelation of all that I've really been speaking about, was to Abraham, okay, or Abram at that time. Sarah sitting in the back, and she heard all this, and she heard God and the angel speaking with her husband, and she heard things that she had never known before. And she heard about the opening of the tent, and she heard about this good news. And what this really good news translates to is Sarah again is going to have a son, but keep in mind that this son is Isaac, and keep in mind that Jesus is a descendant of Isaac, and so this seed is within her of Isaac, but also in that sense the seed of Jesus, and what I believe is the Jewish Messiah was in her as well.